who you think of when you hear the name Gerald Ford? If so, you're wrong. This is actually Henry Ford. He was an American industrialist, the founder of the Ford Motor Company. As owner of the company, he became one of the richest and best-known people in the world. Although Ford did not invent the automobile or the assembly line, he developed and manufactured the first automobile that many middle-class Americans could afford.
The top picture is of young Gerald Ford playing football. He graduated from South High School in 1931, where he excelled in history and government. As shown in the first picture, he enjoyed playing football and playing center. He became one of the best in the state. His talent helped him with admission to the University of Michigan. Ford majored in economics and excelled in the classroom and on the field.
This photo was taken in 1974, the day Ford was sworn into as 38th President of the United States. Next to him, his wife, Betty Ford. Less than a year after they met, Ford decided to run for Congress to represent his Michigan district. He and Betty were married in October 1998, a few weeks before his sweeping victory, which would sweep both newlyweds away to Washington, D.C. for the next 30 years.
This is a picture of Gerald Ford taking oath for office on August 9, 1974. President Richard Nixon resigned after the Watergate scandal, and General Ford was sworn in as president. He had never before had a national aspirations in politics, but had always been happy for helping the people of his state. Ford became the first unelected president in the nation's history.
The photo you see here is from the fall of Saigon. This was a major event that occurred during the time of Ford's presidency. Saigon, capital city of South Vietnam, fell to North Vietnamese forces on April 30, 1975. The fall of Saigon effectively marked the end of the Vietnam War.
The Privacy Act of 1974 requires the agencies give the public notice of their systems of records by publication in the Federal Register. This act prohibits the disclosure of the formation from a system of records absent of written consent of the subject individual, unless the disclosure is one of the 12 statutory exceptions.
President Ford and Secretary of State Henry Kissinger joined the milieu of mourning families at Andrews Air Force Base for the arrival ceremony of the remains of U.S. Ambassador Lyman Francis E. Malloy, Jr., and Economic Counselor Robert O. Warning, who were assassinated by terrorists in Beirut, June 19, 1976.
Ford offered citizens the chance to leave the country after the assassination of the ambassador. Ford feared that the more could be injured or killed if they stayed in the country. Ford mentions the evacuation of American citizens from from the Office of National Security Advisor Brent Sowcroft in the early morning House June 1976.
The Energy Policy and Conservation Act was signed into law by President Ford on December 22, 1975. The Energy.gov website states that the law's effects were extending oil price controls into 1979, mandating automobile fuel economy standards, and authorizing creation of a strategic petroleum reserve.
The Education for All Handicapped Children Act was signed into law by President Gerald Ford in 1975 as an amendment of the Education for All Handicapped Act of 1974. The Education for All Handicapped Children Act is also known as Public Law 94 to 142. This law was created in an effort to provide appropriate education for the millions of children with disabilities.
One of President Gerald Ford's major accomplishments during his presidency was cutting inflation in half. Other major accomplishments include reducing the unemployment rate, creating more jobs for the unemployed, reduced crime by 751, and increase in housing was seen. For much of his presidency, the times were considered peaceful, as the U.S. was not involved with any major foreign war.
In 1974, President Gerald Ford pardoned Richard Nixon for his disgraced for any crimes he had committed spawned by the Watergate scandal that he might have committed or participated in while office.
The Finding Act is a collection that consists primarily of correspondence, memoranda, briefing material, quotes, newspaper articles, fact sheets, and polling research related to the 1976 presidential campaign. Much of the material consists of letters from the public requesting information on President Ford's positions on issues and the responses of Ford's committee.
President Ford died on December 26, 2006 at his home in Ranch Mirage, California. After ceremonies in California, Washington, and Grand Rapids, he was interned on the grounds of Gerald R. Ford Presidential Museum in Grand Rapids.
Following Ford's defeat in the 1976 presidential election, Ford retired to Rancho Mirage, California. Thereafter, Ford appeared frequently in public as a speaker lecturing for private audiences and on university campuses. In his past presidential years, Ford wrote a number of books, including an account of presidency, A Time to Heal, and Humor of the Presidency.